Today, I'm going to talk about how to get to graduate school in statistics. I was the undergraduate advisor at my university for 12 years, and then I've sent many students both in that role and then since then on to graduate schools at other schools and my school as well. And then I've also directed the graduate admissions program from my department. So I want to start with some terminology. First of all, throughout this presentation, I'll use the word statistics to refer to statistics, biostatistics, and data science. And I'll talk about the differences between these terms later, but I just want people to know I'm not picking on one thing or the other. I'm just using statistics. So first of all, what do you do with so the United States and pretty much the world needs well-qualified statisticians, and I want to emphasize that it's a good job. Statistician was ranked the best job in 2017 by CareerCast. Continuing on, um, with a MS or PhD in statistics, you will find a great job. So some examples of that are some of my PhD and master's students have the following jobs: predicting crowds at Walt Disney World, teaching and doing research as a professor. One of my students integrates energy sources such as wind, coal, and solar on massive power grids. I have another student who models sea lion populations and does statistics and also gets to go on ships to Alaska every year to go count the sea lions. And another student who can't tell me what she does because her work is highly classified. She works for the military. So, how to get to graduate school? There's a variety of issues, and I'm going to talk about each one of these topics. So, the first topic I'm going to talk about is deciding whether to apply. So, what do you do, or why should you get a master's or PhD in statistics? Well, you should do that because then you'll get a higher paying job, more responsibility, a more interesting job, and more independence. And more than that, but all those are good things. I want to emphasize, though, in my opinion, graduate school isn't for everyone. The students who are very successful, particularly at the PhD level, have excellent grades, maybe mostly or all A's and a few B's in math and stat classes, particularly in their junior and senior year as undergraduate students. They have a desire to work hard and then focus and intensity. And when I say things like you need almost all A's, I know from giving this talk in other cases, I see some students' faces fall. And I'm just talking about the generic applicant or a way to put together a really strong applicant. I can't say that, or there are exceptions to every rule. So these are just general guidelines. Next thing about deciding whether to apply. Graduate school is much harder than being an undergraduate. This is one comment that was made by a student who became a graduate student in my program. And he said that the classes are a lot more work and the material's much more technical. And the reason I say that is not to scare anyone, but just to um, make people aware that it's not just like going on to, it's a big step from undergraduate to graduate school for most people. And then another student was really excited. She said, graduate school is so cool. In undergraduate classes, professors tell you how to do things, but in graduate school, professors tell you why they do things. So if you're one of those students who always wants to know more about why, and when you're in your classes, then this is a great opportunity for you. Okay, so deciding whether to apply. So how do you decide whether you want to go to graduate school? Well, there's lots of ways to explore. So one thing you can do is do a summer program to explore graduate opportunities in statistics and biostatistics. You can do research with a professor in statistics or mathematics. You can get an internship, or you can go ask your favorite statistics professor. Ask her why she went into statistics, or ask him why, whether or not he or she thinks that you should go into statistics as to graduate school. So that person definitely will know, or give you some advice. to do applied emphasis or theoretical emphasis. So first of all, for theory, do you excel in your theoretical classes? So the classes where you have to do proofs like real analysis, or maybe you hate real analysis, but you really love math stat, then those are good things to know that then you're enjoying theory. But even if you don't enjoy theory, I want to encourage people not to shy away from it. Often people just need more practice. So maybe you didn't get it the first time, but sometimes the second or third time you really get it. So those are kind of things to think about. Are you willing to do that when you're thinking about going into more theoretical programs or more applied programs? So applications, and sorry, there's a train nearby. Do you love data analysis? Do you enjoy programming in R, in SAS, or Python? Do you get excited about learning about different topics? So what I mean by that is, an applied statistician, one of the fun parts of being an applied statistician is you get to learn about totally new things. I might be doing working with a physicist one day, and then the next day I might be working in ecology, and then the next following day I'm working in diseases. So if that really jazzes you, then those are more applied questions. The next thing to ask is, what type of program do we want to consider? Do you want a statistics program, a data science program, or a biostatistics program? And so again, ask your advisor for more help, but on answering these. But in general, tends to be more general. Statisticians who graduate with an MS or PhD in statistics can be hired by anybody. They tend to have the programs themselves, so I mean the graduate programs, tend to either have a theoretical or have both a theoretical and applied focus. Most of them do, but the balance between theory and application varies by program. So that's something you can ask when you go visit a graduate school. Another type of program then is biostatistics. In general, biostatisticians are hired by drug companies and to work in public health fields. For example, in most counties in the US, they have a public health officer, and sometimes there's statisticians involved too, so that you can have the state, local, and federal levels to work in public health. In general, biostatistics programs often have more applied focus than statistics programs. There's exceptions to that rule, but that's a general case. And then finally, the new kid on the block is data science. In general, it has a more applied focus on analyzing data. So statisticians' view of data science might be more on how do we analyze data. People in businesses are particularly interested because they want to mine our data from our cell phones and our website hits. Okay, so now the final question and where to apply is, do you want to get a master's degree or a PhD degree? There's many types of programs for master's degree, but one of the ways to differentiate them, although it can be difficult, but you can look at, but this is a question you want to ask, is it a professional master's, or sometimes called a terminal master's, but I don't like that term, or is it a master's degree where you're going to get it on the way to a PhD? So what I want to emphasize the difference between it is a professional master's, you can think of along the lines of a law degree, that once you get the professional master's degree, that's as high of a degree as you're going to get in statistics, and you will go on and practice statistics. Whereas there's also the type of master's degree which you can get on your way to a PhD. And one of the reasons that this is important to differentiate these is often programs will not accept any of your classes from a professional master's for a PhD. So if you're interested in a PhD, you want to be very careful about which program you pick. And then for master's programs, there's online versus on-campus type programs. And usually the online are more the professional masters, but on campus can be both. It could be either a master's program or a master's for PhD. So one way to differentiate between the two is sometimes the professional masters may be only a year long, but a master's to PhD program might be 2 years. Then to differentiate a master's degree and a PhD degree, to get a PhD, you have to innovate something. So to get a PhD degree, you have to create new statistical theory and methodology. And it's required. A PhD is required to be a professor, but they're very useful in industry positions. Industry is interested, or businesses are interested in hiring people who know how to innovate and can lead groups of people to innovate. And so there's no rule that says that you have to become a professor if you have a PhD. Lots of students go on into industry and to great things. Okay, so now you need to choose where to apply. And so what you want to ask is what kind of university. So a lot of students, when they first come into me, they say, oh, I want to apply to one of the top 3 programs, which last time I checked, I think they were in statistics. They were Stanford, Berkeley, and University of Washington, but the rankings can change. So if I didn't mention your university, I apologize. But to get into those is very hard. So you need truly outstanding grades. Did you get almost a perfect score on the quantitative section of the GRE? And if you did in those cases, then basically if you're exceptional, then you may want to consider one of the top schools. But there's lots of other choices. But that's one thing I want you to do, or students to do, is think more broadly. It's that we can't all get into those top schools, so think more broadly about types of schools when you're looking. So students also want to know what types of classes to take as an undergraduate, and the requirements vary, but here's one example. Calculus is almost always required through multivariable calculus, which is usually Calc 1, 2, and 3. Most schools require some sort of linear algebra. For PhD applicants, typically statistics PhD programs want a proof-based course like real analysis, and then some other useful courses. So I'm at a meeting right now where we're talking about redesigning the graduate curriculum at a national level. And people are really emphasizing there that for a lot of the statistics PhD programs, what they want to see is math majors, or people who've taken a lot of math. But certainly there's many routes. I myself was a statistics major, so there's many routes to success. But other useful courses you could take are in statistics, computer science, and then again, more mathematics. So how to apply to graduate school? Well, graduate applications usually require the following things. And what I want to emphasize here is it's a long list and it can seem daunting, but it's not too bad. Like your GPA is kind of already done by the time you graduate or applying to graduate school. But it seems like students really focus on or get worried about the personal statement. But one of the things that then they forget is to study for the GREs. So don't forget to study for the GREs. The quantitative part in particular is something that most schools look at. And students who graduate with a math or stats degree usually actually need to study for that because the math is so easy. It's stuff that you haven't done for a long time. Also, don't forget your letters of recommendation. For that good, quiet student who doesn't talk much in a class, particularly at large universities, it's hard to to think about this, but you need to go in and meet your professor, go in at office hours and talk to your professors, because you need to develop these letters of recommendation. And usually you need 3, and they're a very important part of a graduate application. So you want to find faculty who know you and who can say something special about you. What makes you unique? So the next topic is, how do we pay for graduate school? So for master's only programs, for those professional type programs that I was speaking of, usually they require you to pay for the program. For PhD programs or these masters going on to PhD programs, instead of having you pay for it, usually the university will pay for it. And the way it works is that the school pays your tuition. They pay you a monthly stipend for your living expenses. It might be around $2,000 or more per month, and then they'll pay or they should pay your health insurance as well. So that doesn't sound like that much. It isn't, but usually most students are able to make ends meet and live within their means. So, for example, I didn't have to borrow any extra money while I was in graduate school, even though I wasn't making very much money at the time. So there's other options to pay for graduate school. There are fellowships and scholarships available. You can ask for help in your advisor for looking for help for those scholarships and fellowships. Another option is to go get a job and then ask the company to pay for it. Some companies will do that and some will not. The federal government will also do that, pay for graduate school in some instances. And then another option is also getting a job, but then doing an online master's program. And those generally are the professional type of programs, but they're definitely possible, and students have been quite successful in doing that. And I've seen students get very good jobs after doing an online master's. The next topic is important, but it's when to apply, and the deadlines vary. It's almost always easier to start graduate school for the fall semester. So some students want to take a semester off, which I can completely understand, and I did. I actually took a whole year off, and that's what I would recommend. If you need some time off after an undergraduate degree, then then it's much easier to take a full year off and start in the fall semester to be on the standard schedule. The one thing that I want to say with these deadlines is that make sure you meet the deadline. It's very important, and it's becoming increasingly important, actually, that the earlier you can put your application in some cases that can help. It just depends on the rule for the school. But don't be late, because sometimes they won't look at you because they already had enough applications. And then finally, if you want support, where the school pays your tuition, then be sure to apply for the support. You want to ask you want to ask for it. They won't just offer it to you out of the kindness of their heart. So in summary, all these fields, statistics, biostatistics, and data science, can lead to fun and fulfilling and well-paying jobs. And I can't say that enough. I was realizing as I was preparing this talk that I don't know anyone who got into this field who has left it. Now, they might have changed jobs because maybe their first job wasn't for them, but we're all still doing it because it's really fun. We're solving real world hard problems. Many of us feel like we're helping society in different ways, and for all of those reasons, that it's a great job, and graduate school will get you there. So on that note, what do you do? What do you do next? If you have more questions, well, I'm going to open it up to more questions because I'm sure there are some. But some other options is talk to your advisor, talk to other professors at your university, visit the American Statistical Association's webpage for students. They have a whole webpage for students. And then finally, my talk, these slides are available at my webpage, so you can use that there, or I guess I should have put my name on there, but if you see my name, if you just Google my name, you'll find my webpage, and there's a link on my webpage for talks, and you can find these slides.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. I'll need to now take any questions on the presentation. So you have any questions, you can enter them in the question box, and I will ask Jennifer. Our first question is, what would be the first thing that a selection committee would look at when reviewing an application?
Oh, that's a great question. I love that one. Oops, I was just plugging in a camera. I don't know if that's something you want to see, but so the first thing, so it depends. It depends, but we usually briefly scan and sort by things like grade point average and GRE score, and that's because at my school anyway, we get a lot of applicants, and so we want to just briefly sort that way. So we sort, and then we'll look at the top ones, the top students, and those are our first ways of sorting.
Okay, and what kinds of extra projects or activities should students do while in their undergraduate degree to prepare for graduate school?
So that's changing. It used to be the case that we didn't require it, and I would say we don't require it, but I would go back to the things that I was suggesting, that if you can ask in your statistics department, or your your mathematics department, if you could do research. You can ask if there are types or ways for you to analyze data, etc.
Okay. Does experience in industry bolster an application?
Yes, that would be good. And because one of the reasons for that is that you get a chance to know why you want to be there. So one of as I mentioned, I'm at this meeting right now about about new or new ways of doing programs, graduate programs in statistics, and they were mentioning that we're getting more and more students who came from industry, and it's exciting to have them because then they know why they want to be there, and so it's fine to go work for a while.
Okay. Our next question is from James Kilgo. What is the interview process generally like for graduate schools?
So usually we don't, and I this one I'm just speaking on myself. But as far as I know, we usually don't require an interview like they do at some undergraduate institutions. The smaller undergraduate institutions sometimes have an interview process. We don't usually have such a thing. What we do, and what many schools do across the country, is have visit days, and that's on the other side of things. So after you get in, often schools will invite you to go visit their program, and they'll pay you to go visit there.
Um, okay. What should students be working with teachers on in their undergraduate, or should they be working with teachers on stuff in their undergraduate degree?
And you probably don't know this, but I'm not quite sure if the person means the teaching part of thing, like learning how to teach, or working with their professors. So I kind of answered the working with the professors one, so I'll talk about the teaching part. That's not required, but it's if you have had some sort of teaching experience, it does enhance your application, because then whoever you were teaching for, like say you were a undergraduate teaching assistant, then you can have the person who was you were the faculty member that you were working with, ask them to write you a letter of recommendation, and that person can say that you're ready to be a graduate teaching assistant, which is good because that's one of the ways, or the main way, that most universities pay for their students, for their graduate students.
Okay, the next question, if I don't have the best GRE scores, will I automatically not get accepted?
So that's a great question, and one that I'm kind of struggling with. So if you don't have the best GRE scores, but say you have other great qualities, like maybe you've done research and you have good grades, I would definitely apply. I mean, maybe you won't get into the top university. However, it will vary. I was just speaking to somebody, and he was saying that they use a holistic approach when they're looking for students, because they're looking for a diverse student body. They don't want, and this person was saying that they weren't just trying to get the top students in every class. They wanted to get diversity. So don't discount yourself if your GRE scores aren't the best, because not everybody does well in that kind of standardized test.
Okay. The next question is, how important is experience with undergraduate research?
How important is undergraduate research? It's useful for students because then they know if they're doing the right thing, like basically starting to answer the question, should I go to graduate school? But in terms of getting into graduate school, it's not required. There is a huge demand for statisticians, and across the country, and so don't eliminate yourself, and don't get too stressed out if you haven't had research experience. And I just want to say, because I know I've got and as part of the audience, we've got some students from big universities and small universities, or small colleges. And sometimes at the big universities, things are just not set up to do research. Some schools that it is, and other schools it isn't, and that's okay. You're not at a disadvantage. So I would encourage you to apply whether or not you have research experience.
Okay. The next question is, in terms of the personal statement, do you have any key tips or do's and do nots for what to include?
So my first do is that I don't overly stress about that. The personal statement, they're important, but they're not the key thing that will let you in or not. The second thing I would do is I will say, actually, going back to the don't stress, sometimes students don't know why they want to go into stats. They just thought it was kind of fun, and so that's fine. But if, say, you do have some poor grades, or you had one bad semester or something like that, somewhere in your essay, like maybe the third paragraph, not the first paragraph, you might say, talk about what happened. Like, we all have life crises, or sometimes just a hard semester. And so I would just address it. We can see, we're going to see your transcripts. And so we can see those bad grades. So bring it up and talk about it a little bit, but don't make it the theme of your essay.
Okay. How do you determine how applied or theoretical a program really is?
Oh, that's a great one. I I don't know, but one of the things you can do is look at the classes and see what the titles are. You can look at the faculty at the school, particularly if you're interested in a PhD, and say, are they working on things that you're interested in? So, for example, if you're interested in public health issues, then you want to see if the faculty, if there's at least several faculty in a particular place that work on that. And whereas if you're interested in more theory based things, then you'll see those kinds of topics. The other big advice on the types of programs is go talk to faculty at your school that have a PhD in statistics or any of these other fields, because they will know. So they will be able to say, oh, this department's more theoretical, or you can tell them the kinds of things that you're interested in, and then they'll help you find the right school.
Okay. How is undergraduate ranking/reputation used in the admissions process?
Oh, you guys are asking great questions. I don't think anyone sorts on the applications on graduates or on undergraduate ranking. However, it does help if we know that there are good, if we know that you have a good education in mathematics or mathematics and statistics. So in terms of the ranking, that's when that matters. However, many of us are very interested in getting a more diverse student body. And if we just take from the top 3 universities and those students go to the top 3 universities, that's not a very diverse student body. So basically, if you are at a university that's not a top ranked university, I wouldn't worry about it too much. I know one student in particular that wasn't at a top university, but she was wooed by all the top graduate schools because she had such glowing recommendation letters, um, and because she had very good grades.
All right. How long are the programs, both master's and PhD?
So master's programs can be between 1 and 3 years. Usually a 1 year program is more of a professional program, and sometimes they're 12 months long instead of just 9. And then a standard master's program is usually 2 years, but sometimes that goes into 3 years, and those tend to be the students who are maybe struggling, or were enjoying teaching so much that that they got more involved in other things. So I'd say on average 2 years.
All right. So the next question, I am a recent BS grad in math and stat from University of Illinois. Due to some personal reasons, I finished the programs in 2 years with nearly perfect GPA, but no research experience. I was rejected by all 20 PhD programs that I applied to last year. I am wondering if I can still apply to similar programs this year or in the short term.
Wow. I definitely want to answer that, but I realized I didn't fully answer the last question because I only talked about masters. So for a PhD degree, most students finish starting from undergrad to finishing their PhD in 5 to 7 years. It's pretty rare to finish in 5 years. If you go right from, or let's say from the first time you started graduate school to when you finish a PhD, I would say most students take about 6 years. So going to the second question, I think two things. You need to figure out what happened, and so try to go talk to an advisor if possible and figure out some strategies for why you weren't accepted. I'm wondering about the person who had the question about their GRE scores and also their letters of recommendation, because as I mentioned, it's not just grades, it's also the other things. And then finally, the a question is, do you have the right math classes? Basically, do you have enough mathematics? Because that can be an issue. And then last of all, maybe don't go to the top 20. There's great programs that are below that. So there's nothing magic. As a matter of fact, the rankings for PhD programs are kind of silly because there's basically a lot of good ones.
All right, thank you. The next question is, how should I decide between statistics and data science grad school if I'm not really sure what the difference is?
That's a great question. So one way to tell, well, actually, let me say it this way. One way to tell a good data science program is make sure you have enough depth in whatever it is. So what I mean by that is some data science programs suffer from the problem is they're teaching you a little bit of everything. And I've talked with some people in businesses recently who are saying that they want people who are really good at X. So X could be they're really good at statistics. They're really good at data analysis. They're really good at computing, the computing side of statistics. So if your data science program has that type of specialization, then I think that's good. The statistics programs tend to be more similar, and so they're going to tend to give you a pretty good grounding. Now, I will say I'm totally biased because I grew up as a statistician, if you will. And so there's very good data science programs as well. But you just have to pick and choose and be careful about which one you choose.
All right. And so once in grad school, are students assigned to advisors or do they have to choose one?
Okay, so a couple things about this. So if you're applying, which most people who are listening are not, but if you're applying to a biology program, the way it works is that usually you have to find the advisor before you get there. For most statistics, data science, biostatistics programs, we don't require that. So most of the time students come in, they're assigned a generic advisor. Some departments just have one advisor for all first years, or sometimes people break it up. And then what happens usually after the first or second year, then students choose their advisors. And most schools give you opportunities to get to know the faculty in more than classes. So for example, at my school, we have a first year seminar where every single faculty member goes in and talks about their research. So the student has an opportunity to pick and choose who sounds interesting. So choosing an advisor is almost always the student's choice. And with that advisor, then you figure out what a PhD question is and things like that. But it's not something to be overly stressed about. But when you pick a school to go to graduate school to, you want to make sure that you can look at several faculty and say, I could work with those people.
Who should I write my letters? Write my letters? Only math and stats professors, professors from other disciplines, internship advisors?
Oh, these are great questions. I would bias it to math and stat professors. I prefer to read letters from there. So for example, sometimes one time I was reading a letter from a swim coach and that was nice, but it didn't tell me that person doesn't know whether or not the student will succeed. We're in a statistics program. So I tend to favor math and stat people. So I would suggest if you can get them all from there. If you can't, maybe 2 from math and stat and 1 from some other discipline. But it's better in general to get them from faculty. Now, if for some students go and work for a while, and then it makes sense to have maybe 1 from an employer. But even then, it only is only useful if that person is a statistician. It's not terribly useful if the person doesn't know about stats, because usually then they just say kind of generic things like, she's a really good worker, which isn't terribly informative for graduate school.
Okay. And the next question is, how many schools should I apply to?
I don't know. So I send out over 100 letters every year, not 100 different people, but I've had students apply to 2 programs, and I've had students apply to 20. I think 10 might be a good number, but it also depends on if you are choosing, say, going back to that student that only choose the top 20 programs in the top 20 rankings, then you want to apply to more. If you're willing to go more broadly to other programs that aren't in the top 20 ranking, then you don't have to apply to so many. So one thing I tell some students is, why don't you pick like a few stretch schools, some schools that you feel like you have a good chance of getting into because your advisor told you that, and then maybe some schools that would be kind of fallback schools.
And the next question is, what is a good first step if I am just starting the process of picking the schools I'm applying to?
So I will try to, a good first step is to look at a list of all the programs, and I was trying to include that in my talk, but I couldn't find the link on the American Statistics Association webpage. But if I get to it, I'll add it to the end of this talk and post it. So that would be a good first step. The other thing I would do is start talking to faculty. If you have faculty at your school that are statistics faculty, so they have a PhD in statistics, or biostatistics, go ahead and talk to them and ask them about where to go. Another thing to think about is where you'd like to live. Grad school is tough, and so you might want to live in a place that you actually want to be in. However, one of my friends reminded me that if your goal in life is to get a PhD in statistics to become a professor, just remember there's kind of an unwritten rule that you can't get a job where you got your degree. There's definitely exceptions to that, but that's something to remember. So if your absolute job is to live your dream job is to live, I'm just making this up, but this is where I live, Fort Collins, Colorado, then you probably don't want to go to graduate school here. You want to go to school in another place and then set your sights at trying to come to Fort Collins later.
And the next question is, how personalized should my personal statement be to the specific schools?
Another great question. I am always impressed when a student has looked at us and can say, I want to go to your university, so because you have several faculty who work in a particular topic. I think that makes you stand out. So that would be a good thing to include. Now, your whole essay doesn't have to be personalized, but maybe have a paragraph about that. That would be great.
What are the job prospects after graduate school for PhD versus master's degree?
So job prospects for any kind of statistician, biostatistician, or data science is super good. I've been doing this job for 25 years, and all of my students have gotten multiple jobs. My favorite story is I've had 2 students get 9 job offers in a very short time, and there's nothing special about me. There's just a lot of jobs. So the job prospects are super strong for both. When you're deciding in terms of money, there isn't that much money. So if your goal in life is to make money, there isn't that much money differentiation between master's and PhD, at least to start. Later on, maybe there is, but if you want to go work in business, both a master's or a PhD, they're both really good things to do. So what a lot of students do is they go and with the idea is, I'll get a master's to start with, but then I want to keep the door open for a PhD. And that's why, if that's something you want to do, you should go to a place where they have a master's that leads to a PhD, as opposed to doing the professional master's. But if you're sure that I've had students say, I can't deal with any more than 2 more years of school, then go ahead and do that professional master's, because that'll be 1 or 2 years.
All right. The next question is, what industry jobs seem to require PhDs?
So the types of industry jobs that require PhDs would be with some of the larger companies like Amazon, which I guess is Alphabet, or Google. They have research groups who do the innovation. Also in biostatistics, all drug companies have leading drug trials have lots of PhDs working for them. some smaller companies where all they want to do is analyze data, or some government positions like at state government levels don't require a PhD, but there are some federal government jobs in many different parts of the federal government that require a PhD for the upper level jobs. So you start at a federal position, you start at a higher paying grade if you have a PhD.
All right, so we're running out of time. Thank you, Professor Jennifer Hoeting, for your talk. This concludes the graduate school info session. In a few minutes will be the career panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.